this one moment here seems like he's talking about how churches need to stay the same, or is it even the truth anymore? And then they come to this meal and they're like, woo, where are you headed there, brother? I have never seen or heard of a lot of things that's going on right now. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I grew up in the FLDS community. It is a polygamous group run by Warren Jeffs, and I moved out when I was 18 years old.
I was raised LDS. Sam and I have been married for 9 years and have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. If you're interested in just listening in today, we do have our podcast available, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're from a polygamous background and would like to share your story with the world, please feel free to reach out at growingupinpolygamy@gmail.com.
We also currently have our holiday fundraiser where we are looking to adopt a room at the Short Creek Dream Center, which is one of Warren Jeff's old homes that has been transformed into a place of refuge for people leaving polygamous communities, especially the FLDS. So that link is below. We have already hit our goal, so thank you so much for that. And the more money we raise, the more we can do in possibly other rooms or adopt a larger room. So please continue to donate if you feel so inclined.
It makes us just feel so blessed and so happy. Thank you all so much for all of the donations. We can't believe that we already surpassed that goal, but thank you. And we look forward to showing you what we are able to do with that.
Yes, today we are going to react to another one of Peter Santenello's Mormonism. And it has been fun.
Fundamentalist this time around.
Yes, it's been so fun as he's been going through Mormonism in different communities. Obviously, if you haven't seen the video with us in it, we'll leave the link down below. And our tour of Short Creek and Sam's story. We've been doing the other Mormon videos that he's done so far. This one, we've been so excited for because... Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm excited, especially because it is a fundamentalist group. So similar ideas, I assume, to the way I was raised in the FLDS, because the FLDS is a fundamentalist group, fundamentalist Mormon group. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited to see kind of their twist on things, because every fundamentalist group has a little bit of a twist on things, right? So I'm interested to see how they do it.
I'm excited because they are in St. George, Utah, which is where I was raised. Right. So I lived there pretty much my whole life. And so I'm really excited to see kind of what they have to say about that and the area and all of it together.
Yeah.
So
let's see what they have to say.
Here we go.
Good morning, guys. Today we have a very interesting video. That is with Mormon fundamentalists. These are the Mormons that still practice polygamy, or as they say, plural marriages. Now, in all the Mormons that exist in this world, the roughly 17 million of them, under half of 1% have stayed to the fundamentalist doctrine. We're gonna get in with some of these fundamentalists to see how they live, understand plural marriage better, and get an inside look of a world that most of us will never see. Let's do this.
The Red Rocks, the Red Rocks.
Do you know where that is?
Yeah, it looks like he's out by Snow Canyon right now.
Okay, near St. George.
Yep.
Am I in this or no?
You're all in.
All in.
One more time. 1, 2, 3. Awesome.
Cool. How many different fundamentalist groups?
I think at least
200.
Yeah, they gave us that.
You don't want to be on camera?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Okay, cool.
I don't want to do it in front of the LDS representatives here. I want to be respectful
Okay, gotcha.
to them.
I think they're at the Jacob Hamlin home in Santa Clara, Utah. So this is on the way between St. George and Ivins, and that's what it looks like to me with the vineyards.
That's exactly what it looks like to me as well. And obviously, people from all different backgrounds come to visit this home, but I think primarily it is the mainstream LDS church members that come to visit this home, I would say.
And it's LDS. Typically, it's senior missionaries that give the tours of it. So when she says, I don't want to speak in front of the LDS representatives, she's probably talking about there being senior missionaries that are the ones that give the tours of the historical home. So the Jacob Hamlin home here, the Brigham Young home in St. George, the Tabernacle, those are all historical sites, but at the same time, they are managed by the mainstream LDS church, and there's normally missionaries there to give tours.
Let's see if we can pick up a name tag on any of these people here. Maybe if there's a missionary name tag, those will be those missionaries, that, as they're called, that are guiding the tours and kind of in charge of the place.
Mm-hmm.
So,
there's a big difference between you, or what? What is that?
yes, we believe in the fundamental principles that Joseph Smith and Brigham Young taught.
Okay.
And they've taken those away. They've taken celestial plural marriage away because of all the opposition from the government, United States government.
When did they take that away?
1890 was the manifesto.
Oh, a long time ago.
Yeah. They've actually persecuted a lot of the people that believe in celestial plural marriage. Tried to rip families apart.
Why do you call it
But then-
celestial?
There are different ordinances and things that you comply with in order to make it so there's more harmony in the home. I've been in 2 plural families myself,
Okay.
so I could say I'm a polygamous wife.
So you had a sister wife?
Oh, many sister wives.
Many?
Yes.
How many?
Annette's actually one of my sister wives. The one
Who's
with the
Annette?
dark hair.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the left?
Our husband passed away
I'm sorry.
in 2015. With her family, I had her and one other person. And then in the previous family, there was 5 of us. Both of the husbands had health issues. So,
Okay. So
Just want to point out really quick here, he asks her, why do you call it celestial marriage? A lot of you probably have heard us talk about this, but for those of you who have not, she did mention that, well, they want to live a certain way in their home, but beyond that, the celestial kingdom is, in their minds, the highest degree of glory, the highest kingdom in heaven. And the celestial kingdom, they call that the celestial marriage because it is a doctrine, it is a commandment in their mind from God. In order to live in the celestial kingdom, you have to live plural marriage, or celestial marriage, as they call it.
Yeah. And kind of interesting side note as well. So it talks about that in Doctrine and Covenants, which is a book of scripture, modern revelation from Joseph Smith. It talks about in D&C 132 about the celestial law. And it was meant at that time to be polygamy. And since then, like me being raised in the LDS church, we were taught that celestial law now just means the sealing of families. So being sealed in the temple is now the new celestial, not new, but like the celestial law as it
No.
applies now.
Right.
Whereas the fundamentalists are going to say, no, celestial law was polygamy. It was very clear it was polygamy, and it was never meant to be changed from that.
And that's why she mentioned in the beginning here that the mainstream LDS church has taken away a lot of those fundamentals that were introduced to the church in the beginnings.
Yep.
walk us through someone that doesn't know that world at all. Is it super challenging, or what's it like having multiple sister wives and one man?
There's challenges,
Okay.
but you learn to rise above those and to love each other and to care for each other and for each other's children. It's just a different attitude and perspective is what I say. You have to take on, you have to get over your fears and jealousies.
Okay. Can you
So-
leave at any time if you want, or no?
You can if you want. There's free agency. Free agency is
Free agency.
highly honored.
In your fundamentalist sect, not in all of them, right? Some of them, like Warren
I would
Jeffs.
say
you
Warren
can-
Jeffs is horrible.
That's
That is-
FL. That's known as FLDS.
Yeah, there's a lot of mind control in
Okay.
that, and
Okay.
we don't believe in mind control. We believe in free agency.
So yes, I agree with what she's saying here, that a lot of other religious, even fundamentalist groups believe in a lot more of that free mindset, that, you know, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. I do want to just point this out, though, because I was raised in the FLDS church. Technically speaking, it was the same there too, because free agency is talked about in the scriptures that we read.
Mm-hmm.
So they would always say, "Oh, you are free to do what you want to do. You can come and go, or not come and go, but you can go if you want to." And that's true, but leaving, and it sounds like she believes this too. We'll see here in a little bit, but it sounds like she believes very strongly in her fundamentalist beliefs. And if you do believe in those, it's not, yes, you're technically allowed to leave, but no one wants to if they believe that is the only way to return to God.
Yeah, exactly. It's so much more complicated than that to leave any high demand religion. And in the case of polygamy, that's a pretty high demand, right? That's a pretty high bar to be trying to reach for. So high in the sense of like very, like she said, there's a lot of jealousies, and they're meant, women are told and believe, like she was saying, that it's meant to overcome your jealousies and to become more godlike and more goddess-like, to be able to do that. And so when you have that and you believe in it, yeah, there's always the door's right there. You can go ahead and leave, but you're leaving your family. You're probably leaving your children. You're leaving your community. You're leaving your faith. you're leaving everything that you've known before, yeah, go ahead, just leave.
She mentioned mind control. And of course, that's what they're going to say about Warren Jeffs, mind control. He was 100% true, by the way. The mind control, the brainwashing, as some people would call it, to make you believe that this is the only way, therefore you don't want to leave. Well, yes, that's easy to say because of all the awful things Warren Jeffs did. But you also have to remember that someone from the outside perspective, from what she believes, might call her belief mind control in some ways. So, it comes and goes from different perspectives. It's just a tough thing to explain without just saying, oh, everyone's being controlled.
Yeah. No, there's definitely people who are going to look at this and be like, wow, there must be a lot of mind control to convince 5 women. If a guy if a guy can convince 5 women that it's for their own good to share their husband, and it's all for their being able to overcome this world and their eternity, some people would say that's mind control as well.
Right. But I love that this is being showed, because obviously she doesn't feel that way. She doesn't believe that. And that is important for everyone to understand, that she doesn't believe that she's being controlled in any way. Neither do the FLDS people, except for the extreme cases where they were actually being held captive, per se, in a home. That was very rare, and that did happen, but that was not the norm, at least not what I saw. And some people may disagree with me at this point, but I have multiple family members, even sisters, that have left. And when they chose to leave, after they got past that so-called mind control and they chose to leave, it was as simple as leaving. When it came to the physically moving, it was as simple as just, okay, and they left. Yeah. And I know that this has happened with a very close relative of mine within the last couple of months. So I just want to point out there are extreme cases, but it's not everybody's experience.
Yeah, for the most part, nobody likes to think that they're being controlled.
Correct, yeah.
We are encouraged to keep our covenants and try to work through our differences, of course. But nobody is going to be hunted down and killed like, you've heard of the LeBarons. Some of the LeBaron groups have actually killed their members.
Those are the ones from Mexico.
We do not believe in that at all. We believe that our husbands are supposed to be called on missions and do the Lord's work, and so they're not always around. And so it's nice to have that close-knit companionship with other women. A woman relates to another woman a lot better sometimes, and to help be supportive to each other and help each other's children.
I think it's interesting she says that their husbands are being called as missionaries, because the FLDS didn't have missionaries.
Now, this is going back way to the fundamentals here. They're going back to the way it was, even more true to the way it was than the FLDS was living, in the sense that back in Joseph Smith and Brigham Young's day, they were sending missionaries and even married men off to serve these missions. So, wow, this is intriguing.
So far, it's sounding like they're going to be pretty in the middle between the way I was raised, mainstream LDS, and the way that Sam was raised in the FLDS, because we had missionaries. Well, there's 2 different kinds of missionaries. You have missionaries who are young men and young women who go out when they're single, and they're not allowed to be dating on their missions, not allowed to be married. And then there are a couple missionaries that when you're older, senior missionaries, and typically it's after people retire and they leave as a couple. And as far as I know, you have to be a couple. I've never heard of like a single elderly man going, or a single elderly...
They do.
They do?
Yep. When I was in my mission in Chile, there was a single lady that was there doing a mission work on her own. I believe she was a nurse of some kind, and she was there to help missionaries in need.
Wow, that's amazing. See, I just learned something new. But it's definitely more rare. We'll just say that. But sending fathers, like raising children on missions in the same sense of the word as the younger, is not very common. Sometimes they'll be sent like as stake presidents or in high callings, but not necessarily considered the same type of missionary work.
Yeah.
So
how many children did you have in your family then?
Okay, so in my previous family, I had 2 boys from my previous marriage and 2 daughters in that marriage. So I had 4. My other sister wife had 6. The other sister wife had 5. And then our husband actually had a first wife that chose not to be a part of it.
Okay.
And she had 7 children. So we had those children too. So wow. I would have to add a lot, but quite a few children.
Did you forget names?
No.
Never.
No.
Are you like under one roof, one house?
There was times we were, and there was times we had our own separate abodes, just depending upon the circumstances and what was happening. And as the family grew, it kind of was better to have our own abodes, but to still come together. We always came together for many functions.
And now you're not in a plural relationship?
I'm not right now.
Oh.
I would like to become in that again, but my current husband is kind of not sure if he's ready for that.
Oh, wow.
Okay, yeah.
He's a little scared.
This again will just kind of bring testament to the fact that it's easy to look at polygamy and say this is so bad for the women, or no one could ever really want that. And then here's a good example of a woman who she's like, I would be down, but my husband's not.
How strong her faith in polygamy must be, right? Like,
Exactly.
My husband doesn't want it, but I'm trying to convince him. Everyone out there that isn't familiar with polygamy is probably thinking, what? Why in the world? I liked Peter's question of, do you forget their names because there's so many in the home? Mm-hmm. I think that was true. I don't remember any of the mothers in my home forgetting a child's name. But man, it was funny when father would try to say something to one of his children, and he would, after saying all the names in the Bible, he would finally get to the right name that was our name. And, I don't know why, but it was just funny. It was one of those things we always chuckled about, because he would often, when he tried to call us by name, he would get through several of the siblings before the one he was trying to refer to. So it was just a funny memory.
That's super funny.
I'm the eager one, and he's scared.
See, I would have thought it was the opposite. I would have
Exactly.
thought it was the men pushing this, and
Not always.
Not always.
Not always. With my mother and my father, it was my mom pushing it. My dad was the one that was holding back.
Interesting.
Yes,
Wow.
because he realized the responsibility and was like, can I make sure everybody's happy? And
The financial responsibility is massive.
that's very massive. So most of the time all of us are going to work, or there's certain wives that will go to work and others will take care of their kids and help teach them, and or they'll take turns. So not every family is the same.
Do you think plural marriage is a natural thing because it comes from your God, your scripture, let's say?
Well, the way we look at it is, if there's a really good man that's righteous and that wants to be honorable to his women and to the children, he should have that opportunity to be the father of as many children as possible. And we believe that when we come down here, we are to provide physical bodies for our spirit brothers and sisters.
Okay.
And we want them to have the greatest opportunity to be raised in a righteous family, instead of like a lot of people out in the world, the woman has the children, but the man is off doing his own thing and not being honorable to her. So
What do you mean, like cheating on the wife? Is that what you
cheating
mean?
on the wife, or drinking, or just doing things that it's not trying to be uplifting and help be a righteous priesthood head. There's a lot of really good men out there that are honorable to their wives and good like that. But we just feel like if there is someone honorable and trying to uphold their priesthood callings, they should be given that opportunity. So we don't believe celestial plural marriage is for everyone.
Interesting.
That's an interesting way to view plural marriage.
Uh-huh.
I've never heard someone talk about, obviously it's always been kind of a status of righteousness, even within the LDS church. Like, you were supposed to be righteous, and in her case, or her words, honorable, in order to receive more wives. But the idea that it is to populate and have as many children and to bring as many spirit children into a righteous home, I don't know if I've heard that perspective before. What about you?
Regarding polygamy?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, even within the mainstream LDS church, the idea of bringing God's children into the earth is very much talked about, right?
Yeah,
multiply and replenish the earth, right? That is very much talked about. But the idea of more wives to bring in more children, that was an idea in the FLDS for sure.
Okay.
It wasn't always so much talked about because it wasn't up to the man necessarily to go out and choose more wives in the FLDS. It was about waiting for the prophet to call and say, hey, now I find you worthy. So yes, the man being worthy for the call was talked about, but not necessarily him feeling for himself that he was worthy.
Yeah, gotcha. I think within the mainstream LDS church, a lot of it was, even if you have a righteous man, it doesn't mean that he needs more women to be able to have as many children as possible. That it's supposed to just be, you have as many children as possible with your singular wife. A
Right.
lot of people within the LDS church, and it's not doctrine like as far as whether or not contraception's allowed or anything like that, but there were a lot of families that were like, we will have as many children as God allows us. That was very, very common.
Right.
And but it was never, oh, I can't give him as many children as he deserves, therefore
Right.
you need more wives in order to be able to have as many children as possible for you.
Right. Yeah. Huh. It's interesting. I mean, it's becoming less like that, but a few, I don't know how many years ago, but a while back, it used to be more common that even mainstream LDS families would have a lot of children.
Yes.
Now it doesn't seem to be quite the same.
Yeah.
It's for only those that really want to.
So there's not a pressure in your religion?
Yeah, we have a lot
That
of people that
You don't
haven't-
have to be.
No.
Okay. The name of your religion,
Here we
your
go.
church, I'm sorry.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the righteous branch.
The Righteous Branch. Okay.
Oh.
So that's obviously not F.
Ooh,
Oh,
burn
wow.
the righteous branch.
So we are the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but the right ones. Wow, that's an interesting.
Have you ever heard
I can
of them?
say no. That's what I was going to say. I've never heard of this group before. I hope they say how many. Have they said that already?
They've not said that yet, but I'm very curious as
I wonder
well.
how many there are?
Because, I mean, they're in the St. George area. I grew up my whole life in St. George, and I've never heard of this group. So I'm guessing they're probably very small, but I'm intrigued to find out.
Yeah.
FLDS, but you're fundamentalists.
Yes.
It's a bit
There's
confusing,
a lot of different
right?
groups. You're
Yeah.
going to hear of the AUB and the FLDS and the Short Creek group, and you're going to hear a lot of different groups.
Okay, do you all get along, or you stay to yourselves, or?
We have interacted some.
Okay.
Some people don't want to interact with us. Some people are fine. I've gone to LDS church meetings because my current husband is LDS right now.
Oh.
So if your husband agreed
So-
to going into a plural
Thank you,
marriage,
Peter.
you would want him to pick your sister wife. You would want him to pick, or how does that work?
How it works is we actually don't pick them. We can have inspiration or witness or dream, but we have a prophet, and we
Okay.
believe that the women are supposed to, if they want to be in a family, they need to go put their name in with the prophet and just say, well, I would like the will of the Lord. Will you please pray? But the prophet also, on the other hand, he also honors the free agency that I said once again. So the woman has her final choice. No woman
So
should be forced.
the prophet makes the choice, or comes up with the candidate, but the woman makes the final choice.
That is correct.
Okay, so first of all, the fact that her husband is hesitant, if he is active LDS, if he enters into a plural marriage, he will be excommunicated and
Right.
kicked out of the LDS church. So no wonder he's hesitant in that or scared to enter into it.
I'm surprised. Do you think they're legally married?
I don't know. It sounds like it. If she's the only wife right now, my guess is that they would be legally married.
I'm surprised. That's so interesting because when I came from the FLDS church and then later joined the mainstream LDS church. At that point, it was a fairly big deal and process for me to be allowed in, to be allowed in and to be baptized into the LDS church. I actually had to go have an interview with an apostle and kind of talk about all of that because they wanted to make sure that I understood that they no longer practiced the law of polygamy and that was very clear. And so if I don't know, I wonder what that looked like for them to get married.
Dating and marrying, yeah.
Obviously they weren't married in the temple because she's not a member of the LDS church, so that wouldn't have been allowed.
And she's saying that they have their own prophet.
Right.
So if he's active LDS and goes to active LDS services, I would guess that he believes in the current LDS prophet of Russell M. Nelson. And so changing who you believe to be a prophet and whether or
big.
not you take on another wife from a prophet of a different church is a very big deal.
Oh, yes, I can speak for that. Very big deal. When you believe that this person is the prophet that talks to God, and then to change that to someone else, that's a big transition and very difficult to make. So this is very interesting that she's married to someone that is still active LDS.
Yeah.
And then if
And then
she says, yes, I want to do, whatever it is that you say, and she's
Yeah.
willing to do that, then he will notify the appropriate parties and ask them to get their one witness. They have to have their witness too.
Okay.
So everybody has to have their witness, and there's like a check and balance in there. So it's not.
So it has to be more of like the prophet is a spiritual matchmaker, but not a dictator like Warren Jeffs.
Right.
Like it's not assigned. But at the same time, if you believe that a prophet is a prophet of God and speaks with God, and he receives a revelation that you're supposed to be with somebody, if you actually believe that they're a prophet, why wouldn't you get a confirming witness?
Right. If you believe they're talking to God, that would be pretty clear that, well, if they say this is what God wants, that's what I'm going to do. And that's actually kind of the way the FLDS used to be before the Jeffs took over. I heard a lot of stories where someone would meet, or a boy and a girl or a man and a woman would meet, and they would feel this connection, and they would go before the prophet and say, would you be okay? Can we get your blessing in this marriage? And sometimes the prophet would say yes, and sometimes the prophet would say no, but it seemed to be more similar to the way she's describing it back before Rulin and then Warren Jeffs.
Not just a man running off doing his own thing behind.
There's a structure to it.
There's a structure. Yes,
Okay.
there's some guidelines to try to keep order. And
Wow.
we don't believe in courting and dating. We believe in that we try to find out who it was in the pre-existence that we covenanted with to be with in this life.
So that's pretty similar to the FLDS now at this point, because there was no dating or courting or any of that. It was, this is my person, this is what God wants, and you get married. In a lot of cases, before you really even know the person, you just believe that this is what God wants, this is what I'm going to do.
Were you taught that people covenanted in the pre-existence, before ever coming to earth, that they covenanted with certain people that they'd get married?
I don't know about covenanted. I did hear of stories of people believing that they knew their spouse beforehand, and some people would even claim that they had this feeling that they knew this person before this life, and that they had conversations about getting married before even coming to the earth. I don't know, of course, who knows what that is coming from and where they're getting those ideas, but I have heard those stories.
Yeah, in the mainstream LDS, you're supposed to go and pray about whether or not this person would be the right person for you to marry. But it was definitely all like personal revelation, personal answers to your prayers. And I never heard anyone talk about like the fact that they were supposed to, I guess now that you say it, yeah, there were some people like one-off stories that were like, right. We felt so connected. We must have known each other in the pre-existence. But it was never like, we covenanted then and now we're fulfilling that covenant on earth. It was never like that.
Right. I will say, when I left the FLDS church, the idea of dating around and trying to find your soulmate was very intimidating to me.
I bet.
Because I was raised in a way that I didn't have to worry about that. God was going to match me with the person I was supposed to be with, and it would be as easy as that. And surprisingly, that was almost like a weight lifted off of your shoulders. Because you
didn't have to try to schmooze anyone.
You didn't even have to try to win someone over or to find the right person. It was just about waiting. And then, of course, when I turned 18, then I no longer liked the idea and ended up leaving. So, it sounded great until the point where I was old enough to actually want to make that decision for myself.
That's super funny. Yeah, it's true.
So only arranged marriages. It's like Indians.
Kind of like that.
Traditional Indians, right?
Yeah, like that.
And what I learned in India, this is what people would tell me, because it seems like such a far out concept for, say, secular Americans.
Yeah.
They said, you form your relationship through lust or romantic love.
Yeah.
But in our arranged marriages, you come together not in lust, but you spend the rest of your life falling in love. That's what he told me.
Yes.
I found that interesting.
If you look at the Bible, that's pretty much how the marriages were in the Bible too.
Yeah. For us Gentiles, outside of the religion, do you look at our behavior as a bit immoral? You're dating someone here, you're dating someone there, you're just choosing on your own. What would your view of that be?
I personally don't condemn anybody. I feel Heavenly Father has given everyone the right to have free agency. And not everyone's going to choose to believe the same way as we are. And we are not the judge of our brothers and sisters. We are to just do what we feel is right and be an example of love and charity towards others, and we don't look at that way as what we want to do. But you know, if our youth grow up and say, hey, I want to go out and I want to try that, and we can't stop them, you know. We can encourage them, you know. But I mean, I have daughters of my own that have chosen to go a different path.
Okay.
And I still love my daughters. I still will, because God is unconditional in his love.
Is it tough though, as a mother?
It hurts, yeah, because the way we believe it is, if you don't have the marriages that Heavenly Father wants, that in the next life you won't be married. You will be single. You'll eternally be single. That's why celestial plural marriage is for if you want to become a god again, yourself.
I was going to say, I think it sounds, in this case, much more mainstream LDS, in not going to condemn, but you always hope for everyone that they're going to choose this because, again, if you're believing that it's the only way to be able to be not single for the eternities, to have a family for eternity, then you're going to want this in your life, right? So, and typically if someone leaves the mainstream LDS church, their mother would feel the same way, like, okay, like I'm going to be there for them. I still love them. I still care about them, but I do feel sad for them because they're not going to have what I know they could have, right?
Right.
So you want your daughters to become polygamists. That would be perfect if possible.
I would like them to enter that, but I am not going to force that because that's a personal choice. They have to decide for themselves what they can handle and what they want and what they're willing to sacrifice for.
Yep.
So
here's the legend. BMW stands for Big Mormon Wagon.
And we had fun with all of our little kidleys.
Okay, so sister wife.
Yeah, we used to be. Yeah.
Are you still in a plural relationship or no?
I'm not.
Okay.
I haven't gotten remarried yet.
Do you miss it or do you like
In a way, I do. We became best friends, so we always hung out. We did things together. We had a babysitter if we needed to.
Okay.
We didn't have to pay for a babysitter.
Sure.
Our kids hung out, and they had, association and friends with one another. That was great. We always did things together as a family. We would take vacations together as family. Of course, you don't have as much time with your husband as you would in a monogamous marriage, but that's a sacrifice that you do, and you learn to love the other wives just as much
as the husband. How does it work in a plural marriage? Like one day you have, let's say, rights or whatever. You have full attention. The next day the other wife does. The next day the other wife does. Or how does that work?
In a way, yeah, that's what it was. Me and the other wife, not Trina, we would live actually in the same house.
Okay.
So I got to see him quite a bit. We'd have our separate rooms, but we shared the house, we shared the kitchen, we shared the living room, family time. So
big family meals.
Right, big family meals. So everything was, together. Trina actually had her own home, and so she would only be able to see him when he went over there.
Okay.
Where me, I got to see him more.
That's interesting because you see either normally every wife has their own home or everybody's under one roof.
Right. That's typically what you see. For me, I'm familiar with what she talks about, everyone being together in the same house, same kitchen, same living room, all of that. So, but I do have to wonder, or at least I'm curious, why the one wife was separated from the others. Maybe they'll get into that, I hope, but that's very unique in my perspective.
Yeah, and it sounds like obviously if two wives are in one home and there's only one wife in the other, you're going to spend the majority of your time in that home. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder if that was isolating for
and
Trina.
And then Trina said that their husband passed away at this point. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, was it ever hard, like if you had a great 24 hours, let's say, with your husband, and then he has to leave and go to the other wife? Was that ever a big challenge, or it's just something you accept and it's just normal?
That wasn't, to me, it's normally just something I accepted. Because I knew within me that he loved them just as much as he loved me. And as long as I knew that he loved me, it didn't matter to me.
And did you grow up in a family like this, or how did you get into it?
No, my parents were not monogamous. They didn't. My dad did have a plural wife when I was younger.
Okay.
But she ended up leaving. He never got another one, so I didn't get to see it a whole lot growing up. My dad found Christ Church just before I turned 8 years old.
Okay.
And so, of course, I'm young. I just go to church with him. And so I eventually learned and grew in regards to our church and our religion. I knew that it was, true and is a true principle to live. I got married when I was a teenager.
Wait, Christ Church. Do you think she's referring to their sect, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the righteous branch?
That's what it sounds like. That's exactly what it sounds like, yes. That it sounds like they refer to themselves as Christ Church as well. And that's something that you'll hear from different...
It can get really confusing within Mormonism.
Right, because you got the Community of Christ, which used to be known as the RLDS Church, but it sounds like even sometimes mainstream LDS people will just call it Christ Church.
They call it the Church of Jesus Christ.
Right, but just referring to the fact that this is the true Church of Jesus Christ. And so I think she's referring to her church when she says, what did she say? The church, Christ Church, yeah. I think she's referring to theirs.
So,
What, a teenager? How old?
16.
Wow, okay.
Yep.
Was it arranged or no?
No,
You wanted?
it was my choice.
Wow, 16.
Okay.
In Utah,
Is that normal in the church? 16?
No. Oh, hell no. Way back then, it was totally different. Now that they only allow 18 or older.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I'm like, so in Utah, you can get married at 16 with your parents' consent. So that would still be considered illegal, even though she wasn't of legal age. My guess is that they switched it within her church to happen to be 18 or older because of the underage marriages of the FLDS.
Right. Everyone is she wanted to clarify right away. No.
We don't do that anymore.
We don't do that anymore. I think that people are afraid to even be in the same category as the FLDS at this point. Yeah.
It's always the female's choice. It's her decision.
Was it back then?
Yes.
The female's decision?
Yep.
But in FLDS, it was different. They chose and they had to go into it, right?
Right.
You think it's interesting? I'm going out to Spring Creek tomorrow to see a former FLDS member.
It's you, babe.
Curious.
That's me.
So you're curious about that?
No, I'm not curious in regards to them. I'm curious in regards to what response you're going to get out there. Because I've heard a lot of stuff.
Bum, bum, bum.
Well, now you can watch and find out. It's available here on Peter's channel.
We'll put the link down below.
Yeah, so it was, I believe, the next day after he did this, I believe that we met out there in Short Creek and did that tour.
I think it's cool that she's just as interested in seeing your interview as you were excited when we saw this one coming out. And so I was like, oh, I want to see what the other fundamentalists are doing. So
yeah, she definitely makes it. I don't know that she knows too much about the FLDS church. There's just been a lot of rumors about the FLDS church at this point.
They're so secretive.
And that is very true. So I think that she was very curious how Peter was going to be received. At this point, though, most people living in Short Creek are not necessarily full-on believing in Warren Jeffs anymore. So they're a lot more welcoming than they used to be.
I think a lot of fundamentalist groups, like I think it's coming up at some point, but in the beginning intro, he had said, there's like 200 different groups of fundamentalists or something, is what they said. And I know there's a lot. There's like about 30 to 40,000 polygamists in Utah. But because there's so many do keep so many secrets about it, and they feel like they're under attack and they have to be so careful. It's like all the secret groups kind of want to know how those people over there do it. But obviously they can't like go and ask. And so things like this where Peter gets in with everyone is super fun to see.
You know what I've noticed is as soon as the FLDS was put under this bad spotlight, after Warren Jeffs was imprisoned and all of the things were happening, it seems like a lot of these smaller fundamentalist groups were more willing to share their beliefs and let people in to see behind the curtains because they wanted to prove to the world that they were not the same and that they didn't have to be secret the same way the FLDS was being.
Yeah.
You think it's natural in us, plural marriages? You think it's like a natural human thing?
I do.
No way.
Okay, so you feel like if all like the societal rules went away, most guys would be down with this.
Most of them, yeah. Who wouldn't?
But
Who
most
wouldn't?
women wouldn't be.
Right. Because I think women are a lot more jealous in nature than men.
That's all I was going to say. When I said no way, I just mean that I think most women, it's not natural for women to want to share. And I say that also because almost every single polygamist woman, even with firm testimonies of it, they will tell you that part of the reason they think they're supposed to be living it is to overcome their worldliness, overcome the natural woman inside of them.
Right.
So to say you have to overcome your natural woman means that the natural woman does not want it.
And just a few minutes ago in this car ride, she mentioned that the jealousy was just a challenge they had to overcome.
Exactly.
Right? So if it's a constant challenge that you're having to overcome, that tells me it's not natural.
Yeah.
And we've also learned a few minutes ago that there is a husband that doesn't want it, right? So it's not always just the woman that doesn't want it. And I can speak for myself. I definitely wouldn't want it, even though I was raised in that type of environment and family. So, yes, there comes a point where polygamy, I think, is just too much to handle for both the wife and the husband, right? I think that there's from both sides, there's that issue.
Yeah.
So Benjamin, tell us what makes you different than your average LDS member.
Okay, so we're all Mormons, right? Or at least they used to use that word.
They
But now
say they're not Mormon.
We are Mormons.
Okay.
we're still Mormons.
Okay, this gets confusing, guys. But I learned this in Salt Lake. When I said Mormon, they're like, no, say LDS or even Church of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know why they changed that. because we are
That's a recent thing. It probably won't stick anyway. But
I'm sure everyone
To be
is going to
honest,
agree with that one.
but yeah, it's a thing they're doing right now. They're trying to emphasize the name of Jesus Christ and emphasize their connection and belief in Jesus, and I think that's laudable. But it just doesn't work grammatically. Mormonism is a type of person. It's a type of ethnicity, even. It's a type of religious belief. It's that's just the way it always has been. It's just going to continue to be part of the English language.
I am very curious. Sorry, before we talk about the word Mormon, I'm very curious. Is this Trina's husband that considers himself active Mormon? Did they say whose husband this is?
Not that I remember.
Oh, the other sister wife that he was just talking to doesn't have a husband yet. So my guess is this is the husband who isn't sure if he wants to go into polygamy.
So you think he's
Because he said we're all Mormons, right? So he
Okay.
identifies as LDS.
Okay, well, I guess hopefully he continues to talk and we can make sure and verify that. But because the way he's talking, it doesn't seem like he's very active LDS, because most strong active LDS people are going to switch to, because their leader
the
and
prophet
prophet
said.
has asked them to not call themselves Mormons anymore. So I'd be surprised if maybe he still identifies as LDS, well, obviously as Mormon, but I don't know that he's that active or that he believes that strongly in the current president or prophet of the LDS church.
Yeah, it's interesting. The
Because-
whole is it going to stick or something? Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
so funny.
I mean, he has a point in that the LDS church has always been known as the Mormon church. I mean,
From the very beginning.
not always, but from almost the very beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of stuck as the name. And so throughout the world, if someone wants to refer to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and they want to know who they're actually talking about, they're going to say Mormon at this point.
Or they don't feel like taking 5 minutes to say the name.
Right. Right,
So then they also
exactly.
use it, and you have to remember that the prophets before the current prophet were all very, very big on, the prophets of my youth were very big on being proud to be called Mormon. So the pride that they have, where he says it's not just the name, it's who we are, it's culturally who we are. Taking pride in that is something that goes back through many, many prophets. And again, when we ever refer to people as Mormon, I never mean that disrespectfully, because I grew up being told proud to be a Mormon, hashtag I am Mormon, huge I am Mormon campaigns, millions of dollars spent in advertising. I am Mormon. We are Mormons. We are just like everyone else, but we are Mormons. Be proud to be a Mormon.
Right.
And so though there is this current shift to try to emphasize the Christianity side of Mormonism, at the same time, like he said, for all we know, when the next prophet becomes prophet, it might not be emphasized in the same way because there are different things that different prophets emphasize. And it can change that fast. It went from the prophet who had the I Am Mormon campaign to now we don't even want to be called Mormon within one prophet lineage.
Right.
So it could just as easily jump back in the following prophet after Nelson.
Right. Yeah, because it's the other prophets before President Nelson were Mormon prophets. And now President Nelson is the prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Sorry if you didn't understand that. I said it very quickly. And then, like you said, the next one, even if he continues to just kind of let it ride, I think eventually people will probably get back into their routine of just calling it the Mormon Church.
Yep.
You know, if it's not emphasized very strongly.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Okay. But yeah, no, we still identify as Mormons. And what makes us different from
And you're
Mormons?
considered fundamentalist Mormon, but not FLDS.
Right. So the FLDS
Okay, so
is
he's
a
not-
specific church within Mormon fundamentalism.
So he's not the one that claims to be, or that is currently LDS, because he considers himself fundamentalist.
Yeah.
They were established in 1993, and it's only one small subset. They're the ones that you're going to see a lot of media on. But mostly because of the tragedies and terrible things that have happened in their community.
Warren Jeffs is their leader.
Warren Jeffs is their leader, and
Running it from prison right now.
well, and he's hardly running anything.
Okay.
But he's, he's in prison for good reason.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately,
He's still running a lot.
Yeah, unfortunately, Warren Jeffs is still very much in control. Now, he has his, if you want to call them leaders or his minions on the outside of prison walls that are doing most of the grunt work as far as making sure that his rules are being followed, yes. But Warren is very much still dictating and writing down these revelations that people have to follow. He's very much in charge, unfortunately.
Their whole community has been torn apart by the evils and corruptions and violence that has gone on in their community. So,
Okay.
we
You have nothing to do with them.
nothing to do with them. No more than any other Mormon would have anything to do with them.
Okay,
Totally separate. Separate history, separate leaders, separate communities.
So even most LDS members will put you under one group.
Well, a lot of, generally LDS members view it like they think that they're the original.
Okay.
Yep.
We think they're the breakoff group.
You think you're the original.
We think we're the original. And that's kind of why we don't argue with the term fundamentalist very much. The term fundamentalist was actually coined by the PR department of the mainstream LDS Church. The Mormon fundamentalist moniker, we usually embrace it because it means that we stick with the fundamentals, and we do. We believe in all of the doctrines, practices, ordinances that original Mormonism had in it. So that includes things like the original temple ceremonies. They've changed their ceremonies.
Oh, wow.
We still practice the United Order and plural marriage and believe in the original doctrines of who God is. And they've changed these things throughout the years.
The fact that they said original temple ceremonies within
Right.
their church is very unique because he is totally right in the fact that the mainstream LDS Church, we have more temples than anybody else.
But what is their temple like?
Yeah, I'm very curious. I don't know if he's going to show what a temple looks like.
Because we used to live in St. George, and unless their temple looks very different than the LDS temple, there's no other temple in St. George.
No, but
apart from the two LDS temples.
Fundamentally, in the beginning of the church, before they even had temples, they were still doing ordinances.
True.
So
So
maybe
maybe
they don't
that's-
believe that they actually have to have a temple in order to do those ordinances.
But he did call them temple ordinances, though.
That's true. So that implies a temple. I'm so curious.
And some people, if you go way back, you could claim that a temple could be a smaller building as long as it's dedicated the right way.
Dedicated for the
and
purpose.
By the right power and the priesthood and all of that. I guess, I hope that he shows us what he means by temple, but I don't know if he will.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
So they have a president that is their leader. So every president changes the rules a bit, or how does that work?
To some extent, that's sort of true, but a lot of people will be familiar with the boiling a frog analogy. They don't change everything all at once.
Okay.
But over the 200 years of Mormon history, they've changed a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
We're trying to stay with the original, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're like static. We have a dynamic community. We believe that God is still speaking, still revealing His will. on the earth, and still has prophets and apostles and all of those things. But the difference is that to us, certain things are so fundamental that they cannot be changed. Otherwise, God would be a different God. If God says one day that this is righteousness and that is evil, and the next day he changes his commandments, he changes his rules, or he changes the ceremonies that represent that, like baptism, things like that, then we don't believe it's the same church anymore. And so I would say I never left the mainstream LDS church, but the church left the gospel. The church broke away.
But what about the 17 million members in the world? The vast majority are going that way.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, the main thing that the mainstream church is doing is trying to make sure that it fits with the world. It fits in, right? They're trying to be mainstream Christians. They're trying to be like everybody else. That's not, and that's a way to be popular, sure. But if you just tell people what they want to hear, you're not necessarily telling them the truth.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
See,
so
this is something that's talked about a lot.
Yes, and man, okay, so I can respect the heck out of the idea that when Joseph Smith restored the church, that's the thing. It's a restorationalist church, right? And he said that he restored the principles and ordinances of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so if you're restoring everything back to its perfect truthfulness, and you're restoring it back, then like he's saying, I agree that there's this amount of there are certain things that shouldn't be able to change, or else you no longer restored the truth. You just restored something that was going to continue to evolve. And we've talked about this maybe a little bit before, but kind of what he's talking about right now was a huge piece of my faith journey in that I was kind of feeling, I didn't go fundamentalist Mormon, but I felt the same way about some of these fundamental things where I thought, if I'm making certain covenants in the temple, and that's different than the people who made the covenants in the temple 100 years ago, that means it could be a completely different covenant 100 years from now in the temple. Whose covenants are correct if there's only supposed to be one way to God?
Right.
Right? And so...
And some people are okay with that. Some people are super happy about the changes and the things that are happening. But for others, it's very difficult to see, like him, that if this is the way that the church was restored and you are completely changing what the church was into something else, then is it still the same church at all? And that's his point. And I think that's a big concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, and a lot of people, when they're having problems with changes that happen within the mainstream LDS church, there tend to be more and more breakoffs, which is why there's so many small groups, because oftentimes it's easy to, I don't like the change that is happening right now, or I don't agree with the current prophet in this one thing that's happening. Let me go back to the basics. Let me go back to the fundamentals of the church. Let me research and just read the scriptures and pray about things in the beginning. When you go back to the beginning, you always end up with polygamy. And I think that's why there's so many breakoff groups that when they don't like the changes that are happening, or they feel like the mainstream LDS church is, bending to the whims of the world, they look back at the fundamentals and they end up in polygamy. And you see it I feel like more and more often.
Right.
You're styling there. I like your
dress
sweatshirt. And...
like our own taste,
Right.
but modest. I was married when I joined this church, and he joined it too. He died shortly thereafter.
Okay.
So I'm a widow. I'm sealed to him for eternity.
Okay.
I consider myself married. If the prophet said to me, now you need to go get married to somebody, and I always get my choice, I would say I would rather say no, but if the Lord wants me to do this, that's what I will do, because he has a growth opportunity, and plural marriage is a growth opportunity.
Growth opportunity, but you're not going to have kids now. What do you mean by growth opportunity?
I'm 85. Well, patience, learning to love the other wives.
So you'd be open to a plural marriage, correct? Or
Yes,
no?
I have a great deal of love. I've had testimony of plural marriage for many years. I married a man who was many years my senior, and I still love him dearly. If any marriage fails, it's because of two main things: selfishness and jealousy. One of the big things about this church is we always have our agency.
Okay.
Our agency is never taken away from us.
That's the beauty of it, huh?
That's part of the beauty of it. Part of it is that we claim that our priesthood authority goes back to Jesus Christ. And I've been reading the scriptures since I was 20. So you do the math.
65 years ago.
Yeah, 65 years. I've been reading the scriptures daily. I'm on my 52nd reading of the scriptures all the way through. Pretty hard to fool me.
That is the all-seeing eye of God.
I don't think they mentioned where they walked into, but this is the St. George Tabernacle.
Yes, that's what I wanted to point out. This is owned by the mainstream LDS Church.
Yes, and it was the first meeting house that was completed. So the St. George Temple was under construction, but it did take many years to complete. So the St. George Tabernacle was the first meeting house. I believe they held like city meetings, everything for St. George for a long time. It is beautiful. If you have a chance, you can go take a tour through it. And it's pretty cool, very historical, very old. And fun fact that I can't help but share anytime somebody sees, you saw from the outside that it was the red stone, the red rock, and you can go and see, and there's different chisel marks on each stone. And as they were quarried, every man had his own signature chisel markings, the way that he would chisel out the stone. So you can go to the outside and you can tell which stones were quarried by the same men based on the chisel markings.
The way he did it, yeah. So it's interesting. It's interesting that they are going, as they're doing this tour, they're showing up to a lot of properties that are owned by the mainstream LDS Church now, but these properties have a lot of significance in the history of their church as well, because they also started with the same leaders and prophets. So just wanted to point that out.
I'm curious to hear where their breakoff happened.
Yeah, which prophet? Most likely it was Wilford Woodruff, is who they no longer believed in.
Or they broke off from the FLDS or the Allred group, or they're a breakoff. Like they might not have broken off straight directly from the LDS. They might have broken off from a polygamous group, another fundamentalist group.
That's a good point. I hope they mention that.
That's just a symbol. It's on our dollar bill, and it represents God watching over us. And it's a symbol that was used in the 19th century, very prevalent back in New England. The people who built this building came from New England.
So you were worried people will think it's cultish if they see
Well,
that
they
eye.
see it and they don't understand it.
Masonic symbol.
It's that, but it's more than that. We sing hymns in church about beneath God's watchful eye, his saints securely dwell.
4 sets of stairs like this in the whole country.
Spiral staircases with no center support.
Freestanding. The symmetry was so much more important to these early architects, like Truman Angell, who designed this building, than anything practical. And so they literally incorporated the elements and blended them together, rather than move a door or make it shorter. They wanted to make sure that it had this perfect symmetry and order in everything that was organized. This is basically the earliest form of meeting house that Mormons made. Mormons originally would only meet outdoors or in homes. But occasionally in the 1850s through 1890s, they would build these grand edifices for larger conferences and call them tabernacles. Tabernacles have generally been open to the public and temples are closed for ceremonies. But even in tabernacles, some ordinances have been done. Some of the tabernacles have baptistries, for example, where they do baptisms. Whereas a temple, people only go into those edifices to do the sacred ceremonies of the temple.
In a temple, we wouldn't be able to film inside.
Correct.
Me as a Gentile.
Right. In fact, generally you can only go in if you have what's called a temple recommend, which is basically a statement of faith saying that you believe in those things. And
Driver's license.
yeah, I guess you could. Makes you a part-carrying Mormon. Some people might look at a symbol like the all-seeing eye and seeing that like, oh no, God's watching me all the time. How invasive. But I think the idea of the all-seeing eye is meant to be comforting, that God is always with us. God is always present with us, watching all that we do, looking over us in a benevolent way, right?
Is it God or is it Heavenly Father?
Okay, so God, of course, is a very generic word in English for any deity. Heavenly Father is something Mormons use a lot, and that
You're God.
as the way we view God, right?
Yeah.
We view God as a father.
And that actually goes back to one of the fundamental differences between a Mormon fundamentalist and the mainstream LDS, is that we believe that God is our literal ancestor. And that this is what's called the Adam God doctrine, the idea that the human race descends directly from the gods. So that in this sense, God as a father has a wife who is our mother. And we are literally his descendants rather than just being a created thing. Like he didn't just make us out of mud. The human race was given birth to the same way that we're all created. Now I'm made of the dust of this earth, right? But that doesn't mean that I was made, my parents ordered me from a catalog, right? I was born the same way any other human being is born. So Mormonism sees kind of a joyful marriage between nature and divinity. All these.
Okay, sorry, we just have to quickly say Adam God theory is very controversial within the LDS Church.
Yep.
And like he said, the mainstream LDS Church does no longer believe in Adam God theory. And the very, very, very short and quick version of it, it originated from Brigham Young.
Yep.
And it was the fact that God actually was Adam.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is why he says that we are all God's literal descendants.
Yep.
Mainstream LDS Church no longer believes that, practices that. If you told a mainstream Mormon that, most of them would probably never have even heard about the Adam God theory, let alone what it means or that it ever came from one of their prophets. It's not talked about, and it's definitely not taught. It is in the history. If you go back, you can find it. And that's why he says the fundamentalists still believe that as well.
And I do want to point out that is what I was taught in the FLDS church as well, that they do believe that Adam is Adam, like as in Adam and Eve from the Bible, Adam, that he is our heavenly Father and now our God over this earth. He is our heavenly Father. So yeah, that is the same way I was taught. I'm glad he brought this up.
Yeah.
These natural processes, like even childbearing, are divine in their nature, divine in their origin. Everything in Mormonism points to this concept of the infinite generations of the gods, that we are divine in our nature. But it's too on the nose for most Christians, and so they've been doing a lot of backpedaling in the last several decades in the mainstream LDS Church away from stating those ideas too explicitly, because it's viewed as heresy. Of course, as far as we're concerned, that just makes everyone else heretics.
Okay, that is very, very true in the sense that it was just recently that I grew up very much that the whole point of being on this earth is to become like God. And when we say like God, not become one of God's angels or live in heaven with God, but to actually become a God of your own world, have your own spirit children, all of that. And I recently saw on the LDS Church website, someone had asked the question like, oh, do you believe that you can get your own world? And they were like, no, not that you get your own world. That's something that's characterized by people who are not in favor of the church. And I was like, feeling a little gaslit. I was like, wait a minute. No, that's exactly the purpose. And that's what I'd been taught my entire life. And so then I went to like my mom, I went to other people who had also been raised in the church. And I think like he's saying, they're trying to create a little bit of separation to say, we're not these crazy polytheistic people, because at a base level in Christianity, there is only one God. He's all that ever has been and all that ever will be. And within Mormonism, technically it's polytheistic if you believe that there is God had a God and we can become gods and we can have our own worlds. But that still is very much Mormon doctrine that you can
the fundamental,
do that.
Yes. The mainstream LDS church no longer really teaches that, but fundamentally that is very much the doctrine of the Mormon church. And that is very much the way I was raised too. I mean, we all did what we did. We put up with what we put up with in order to become like God and to be a God, just like we were taught that Adam, who is now our heavenly Father, that he also had a God before him, and he did the same thing. He came to an earth and proved himself worthy, and then returned and became a God, and then created his own world, and then, and so they would say that we can do the exact same thing Adam, our heavenly Father, did by following the example of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and in the end of that example, when they said, okay, no, you're not getting your own world, in the end of that, they said, we just believe that we're supposed to become like God. So they kind of left it open. It felt like they were kind of beating around the bush in order to not appear to be polytheistic. So I don't know, still in Sunday school or in deeper doctrine, hopefully anybody who's within the mainstream Mormon church still knows that that is the main doctrine. It definitely is that way in the temples. It's still very clear. So I don't know why there's trying to be this separation other than trying to fit in with mainstream Christians. I was always taught, though, that what made us special and not like everyone else, and why we had the fullness of the truth, was for those theological ideas. And that is what made us special and made us the true church. Yeah. So them shying away from it sometimes is like, why? That's what made us cool.
Right. Because for us it's fun. It's fundamental.
Oh, check out the belly. Mama puppety. That's cute.
So Benjamin, is your wife showing up today?
She's
Benjamin, there we go.
hanging out with her parents in Cedar City, but we can meet up with her.
Okay. And how many wives do you have?
I have one wife that's with me. I've lost one wife.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't know that.
My first wife was just, she said she was so open to it. So we got married right here in the St. George Temple.
Okay.
I remember talking to her about how we were going to live plural marriage. And she's like, yes, I'm on board, and all of that stuff. When it started coming down to the possibility of it really happening, she changed her attitude. And the funny thing is I was willing to stay monogamous with her permanently.
Okay.
We were monogamous for a long time, and I never dated. We don't do that. I never looked for another wife, anything. But we were married for almost 20 years, and then she finally decided that she wanted to do her own thing. So.
Okay.
This is my son-in-law.
Wow.
It's interesting that he got married in the temple, but they both understood that they wanted to live the law of polygamy.
I wonder when that came, though, because obviously they were both strong LDS, mainstream Mormon members in order to go to the temple and get married. So he's coming from that background. That explains a lot. He seems to know a lot of the way the mainstream LDS church thinks and believes, and that makes a lot more sense if he was raised that way. So, but I want to know, how did they both think that? No, I don't believe that they both thought they wanted to live plural marriage when they were married in the St. George Temple. I think that must have come later. Maybe he started
I'd be very surprised.
Maybe he started looking into fundamental things, and maybe that's when he, in a way, convinced his wife that that's what they wanted to do, and then she decided, nah, okay, but then never mind, I don't want that.
Yeah.
So, but that is very interesting that he went from mainstream LDS church to the fundamental church that he's now a part of, and even was willing to lose his wife over the idea of plural marriage.
Well, he made it sound like she left.
Even before.
Yeah, because he said he would have stayed monogamous for her, but she wanted to go her own way. So it's hard to tell whether or not it's religious or if it's relationship-wise.
Right, maybe it was just completely something different than religion.
Yeah.
Simeon, my daughter Marissa, and son Jeremiah.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Maybe a silly question, but plural marriage or no?
We aren't living
it, no. Just us and the little one.
First one?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Little girl, so.
Oh, cool. Congrats.
Be here any day. We do believe in plural marriage, and I actually grew up in a plural family.
Okay,
so.
okay. You both did?
Yeah.
Would you be open to it or no?
Sure. Yeah, for sure. I think it's important, actually. So, not just open. I'm like, yeah, I think that's a good thing.
Like whenever we feel like God has called us to do that, then the time will come or whatever. So.
Okay, so would it be your bishop that tells you this, or you decide on your own as a relationship?
So.
It's kind of a little bit of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like we're not forced into it. It's all whether we want to or not.
Okay.
Like we're not forced into it or anything.
I wonder, as a monogamous couple, even if you believe in it, like, to have that constantly looming in your head. Can you imagine if constantly, like, normally I feel like you spend your youth searching for your person, right? At least in our case, like, you're searching for your person, you find your person, and then there's that, like, relief of, now I just get to live out my life with my best friend. Can you imagine if there was constantly this waiting, this looming eeriness of, at any moment we might feel prompted and there's going to be another person, our whole lives are going to be turned upside down, and we're going to have to overcome jealousy, and I'm going to have to, like, I feel like that'll be stressful.
Right.
constantly be thinking at any moment God could tell me that we'd have to have another person in our relationship.
Right. Yeah, I would be very interested, especially to hear more from the wife here. She's mentioned, whenever God tells us that's what we need to do, I kind of want to know, is she thinking in the back of her head, please God, don't say that. Don't tell us this is what we have to do.
Yeah.
Please don't. And if that is her mindset, then it's ultimately going to come down to him whether or not that's what he wants.
Yeah, interesting.
What was it like growing up? You had multiple mothers, correct?
Yeah.
And then one father. What was that like? I mean, sure, you could speak for days on it, but what was that?
To be honest with it, awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would describe it as awesome. Like that, as a kid, no question, that was so cool for me.
Just because you had a bunch of brothers and sisters.
Yeah,
And...
I'm actually the youngest of my dad's, and actually my mom's too. So I'm the youngest.
Okay.
So I have 18 other siblings besides me. So yeah, like totally awesome. Like they've gone all sorts of different ways and careers and all sorts of stuff. And so I get a lot of different experience, and I can kind of like work with them and do different things with them. So it's way cool.
And you? Same
So
story?
I'm the second youngest, and there's 22 of us total, myself included. So having that many siblings is a lot, which I'm sure he can imagine.
Wow.
My oldest brother, he's the oldest, the twins, I can't remember how old they are. I think they're like 46. So I didn't really grow up knowing them because they were like moved out and probably married before I was even born. So like it's...
Sam's oldest brother from his father is older than my parents.
Yep.
Just to kind of put in perspective, when you have very large plural families, it's very common to not grow up with some of them.
Exactly. There were a lot of my siblings that were out of the house long before I was ever born, and I'm not even the youngest. I mean, granted, there's 36 of us, so there's a lot of us in the family, but yeah, I wasn't even close. But it's interesting to hear the two different perspectives. You got him here saying, oh, the most amazing experience ever. I have all these wonderful friends that I call siblings, or that are siblings, and it was just perfect. And then switch to her, and she says, it was a lot. It was a lot. And that is speaking from a girl's perspective growing up in it, because looking back at the way my sisters had to deal with things, they were very busy. They had a lot of responsibilities to help raise the younger children and to just kind of keep the household up.
Yeah.
So
It's important to realize that like the whole plural situation is based off of whether we want to or not. Like none of us are forced into it, which, I mean, the children.
In your church?
Yeah. Everybody has to consent, basically, and let's say a second wife or whatever comes for the both of us, like, we would both have to say yes, and she had to say yes.
That's good.
And then it would happen. So, like,
What if you would say no and you want yes? Or that's just to be determined, like you have to talk that out, or how does it work?
Yeah, you know, if it like came down to it, like plural marriage and like whether we live it or not, like we both take that really seriously.
Right.
There's like different stigmas around it, but making one marriage work is a lot of work. So unless you really believe this, don't do it again. Like that's a lot of work.
It's not something you should advise to just anybody, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
He didn't answer the question. Did you notice that?
he didn't answer the question.
He didn't answer the question. He didn't say whether or not, he didn't just say, oh no, she didn't want it, then no, I wouldn't say it. All he said is, you have to really believe in it. And we really do believe in it.
But then she did say that we both have to agree on it, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you never know what he's actually thinking. Sometimes people have a hard time expressing their full idea, so maybe he does believe that, but he didn't mention it, so you have to wonder.
Yeah, he didn't answer.
we both agree that it's highly important that children are raised under their mothers, like not just handed off to schools or babysitters. So, like, we both agree that like stay-at-home moms are important, and then he would be providing for me and my children. Or
would you do homeschooling?
I would love to.
Okay.
I was homeschooled for most of my life, so.
And who was telling me, I'm sorry, I met a lot of new people today, but you're, how did she say it? Plural marriage twin.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So you met Trina.
Yeah.
She was one of my moms growing up, and my mom, and so they were pregnant at the same time, and me and my sister were born 2 hours apart. So different moms, but twins.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Same father,
Yeah.
different moms, 2 hours apart.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
very rare.
Just wow.
Right? Or is that common?
That's not common.
I wouldn't say that's common.
That's
Especially in the same family, like not at all.
I had some siblings that were very close to me within
Like a couple months.
Yes, within a few months difference, but never that close. So I can't imagine having like a someone at the time out. Oh, never mind. I have two brothers that were born on the exact. So they have the same birthday, but years apart. So no one was born at the same time in my family.
Can you imagine the father like running from one hospital room, or in your case, like the Hilda, like the room, like from one room to the other, like trying to like be there for both wives, and they're going through labor at the same time. And then like hurry, and this baby comes out, and then you say hi for a second, but wait, I got to go to my other wife who's giving birth to my other child over here. So I've got to run. Love ya.
I would hope that they would have them very close in proximity, whether it was a birth at home or in the hospital, whatever they ended up doing. I would hope it would be like next door rooms or something.
Still, I can't imagine the attention being
accommodate.
split between me and someone else while giving birth.
Oh, you're speaking for yourself.
Speaking for myself. Just like in general, though, I speak as a woman. I speak as a woman. When you're going through childbirth, you want the support and love and care of your husband.
Yeah.
And to not let that be like a little bit of your moment of bringing your child with your husband into the world and having that be like a bonding experience, and then having like 2 hours later them have to do that with somebody else. So like that's like a whole other level of jealousy.
Speaking for myself, I would never, ever, ever want that. I mean, just the whole experience with just one wife, one baby was just a lot.
Yeah.
I'm sure every father could say the same, but not physically, but emotionally, I was in a lot of pain.
I took care of the physical pain, and you took care of
exactly
the emotional.
Okay. Do you feel like you have to explain yourselves a lot, or nobody really knows?
This is Main Street, St. George, and it's so cute. You can see the tabernacle in the background, kind of behind where Peter's head is right now. But it's just really cute little downtown area.
Sorry if we miss any very important points. All of this great visual that Peter's giving here is very sidetracking. We're enjoying our town from his little camera.
Would you say?
Well, we live in a community that
I mean, definitely. There's a lot of explanation.
Been around this for a long time, so
Right.
like they know us, and we're all family.
Okay, so growing up, the outside world, that being me and people that are non-believing, would you avoid them at all costs, or just you wouldn't associate, or?
You know, I'd say it's kind of like a mixed bag, and it just like
really
depends. I went to public school at one point there in Mesquite, and I had like friends and whatnot. So
Did you ever have to deal with anyone looking down on you guys, like judging you? You felt like a judgment or anything?
probably, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, probably.
We were actually kind of raised in the middle of like nowhere, and we didn't go to public school or anything like that. But so at the time in Utah where we lived, plural marriage was illegal. And so there was a time where cops had visited our house, and it was terrifying because we didn't want it to be taken away from our family, you know. And so we were like hiding, and like, of course it was scary because we didn't want to be taken away and whatnot, but like.
So that's what's happened in Utah law, right? It's illegal as in felony, and then now it's legal, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or it's like a $50 fine or something ridiculous like
I
that.
don't really know.
Right.
Yeah.
But so the pressure isn't on now, but
Right.
not long ago the pressure was
Right.
on.
And like I've heard stories about other people that would like Donica, his sister, would say they'd have to like dive into the bushes to hide from people, or which our parents built that fear into us growing up, which is just kind of how
There
they
was
were
definitely
raised,
I'm a little bit younger, but I think some of my older siblings, they had more of that, like, hey, they're gonna come get us or whatever.
Okay.
And take us away from our families.
I think that's from the 1950s raids that happened particularly to the FLDS, but just in Utah in general, like in the 50s when they were cracking down on polygamy, they created a fear. Well, in the 50s, there were a lot of these people's parents, right, lived through that, and they probably had, parents or grandparents that possibly had been put in prison, like Sam's grandfather.
This makes me wonder if, so I guess either they were a part of the FLDS at one point, or maybe not, but if not, maybe the government, the officials were out to get all polygamous family during that time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Huh. I'm very intrigued now because they haven't said at what point they split off from the mainstream LDS church
Yeah,
yet.
or if they split from the mainstream,
Or
or
a
do they
different
split
one.
off from a fundamentalist group?
Huh.
As time passes, people have gotten more open about it, and we don't have to like hide our children from anybody or anything like that. So
What do you think about secular types that have a bunch of girlfriends, or they're with one girl, then they're with another, they're dating around?
Sorry, there was a moment where the light was on her just right. She looked just like the Mona Lisa. Just had to point that out. I don't know why, but I was like, oh, that's not a painting. It's her.
What are your thoughts on that?
I'm sure there's plenty of people that do that kind of stuff, but I don't really, I guess for me, like religiously, I wanted to find the right one. And dating around forever and going on about that, I wanted to like pray about who I was supposed to be with and find the one, you know, so.
All right.
Except the Goldback.
Oh, the Goldback.
I did see that on the door.
Yes, step right over here.
Oh, that's cool.
We're, as far as I know, one of the only suppliers of the Goldbacks in St. George, Utah. But there are companies that accept them for payment, like Judd's. You can get soup,
Oh, wow.
homemade soup, and sandwiches for Goldbacks.
So back in 2011, basically the government of Utah decided that we were going to accept gold and silver as money. A company actually developed this particular product, and it's actually just that amount of gold in a currency form. Several
wow.
different states have actually authorized it. This is actually a Nevada Goldback.
And so there's gold in the currency.
There's actually 1/1000th of 1 ounce in that currency.
Okay.
Wow.
So by saying one, that's not
Interesting.
$1. That's one what?
Yeah, so it's one Goldback. It's considered one single Goldback.
And it
which is-
sticks to the spot gold price versus
Yeah, so
the dollar?
the valuation, you can actually look it up online, goldback.com, and it'll actually tell you what the exact amount of value is with this particular currency. A lot of
Interesting.
folks feel like it's going to manifest itself as far as the value here very soon, you know,
Okay.
going towards the actual true value of what gold is.
So it's a hedge against inflation potentially.
Definitely, it's one of the things that we do here. You know,
Okay.
we're actually gold and silver brokers. So.
Okay. Yeah, cool shop you got.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
That's an intimidating little
That is
construct right
amazing.
there.
What went into that?
That's pretty cool.
So this is the real Pioneer Museum stuff right here. The Daughters of the Utah Pioneers keeps all the artifacts, all kinds of cool stuff.
Thank you. So you guys do a great job with genealogy too.
Oh, that's really important. And it's important to our faith too because we believe that we're connected beyond death through the veil to all of our ancestors and all of our descendants. And so we view ourselves as being part of this continuum, right? We're not as individualistic, I think, as most Americans are. The Mormon faith is really about becoming united. This is why our vision of Zion is this concept of being of one heart and one mind. In other words, unity of purpose, unity of legacy throughout time, the past, the present, the future. We're trying to build something and change the world. You know, a lot of religions, they look at heaven as like something that's going to happen later after this life. We view our purpose more as we need to make heaven here. We need to build it now.
What about the second coming?
Before he gets into the second coming, that's basically anytime Mormon talks about Zion, that's what Zion is supposed to be.
Exactly. Heaven on earth.
Heaven on earth. So it's talked about in mainstream Mormonism, a lot in FLDS, but that's what they're referring to. He's very well spoken as far as all this goes.
Have you been into the shop?
When he said the name, I feel like I had been when I was really young, maybe with a church group, but I'm not recognizing it. So maybe I haven't.
So I'm just in the video here, you can see a dress in the background. I'm curious, is that what the early day pioneers wore, I assume?
That's what it looks like to me.
That's what it looks like. Interesting.
There's always been a talk of the second coming basically since day one.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're worried about the second coming, that's some future event, not the now.
Actually, quite the opposite. In Mormonism, instead of us viewing the second coming as a Jesus just showing up, like he's coming out of the blue, he's doing all the work, we actually view ourselves as participants. If we build the earth into the type of world in which Jesus would want to live, he will come back to dwell with us. And so it's really, we view it as our duty to create the kind of world, to create the Zion, where Jesus Christ could reign personally on the earth. And so we don't believe his second coming is actually going to happen until he has a people to come to. And that's why we believe it's so important for us to continue to live all the laws of the gospel, including plural marriage and building Zion, United Order, and all that stuff.
That's just true. That's all I'm going to say. Amen.
Yep, that's the belief, is that we got to be good enough for Christ to return. He can't return to an unfaithful or unprepared people.
Society slips, let's say things get worse here.
Sure.
Then you're further away from the second coming.
Could be, yeah. But it isn't necessarily required that everyone is going to live this way, or everyone's going to live the way of peace. That's why the Bible is replete with a lot of terrible judgments too that can happen. But it's more of you have to decide what side you're on. Do you want to live in a world of peace? Are you capable of forgiving your enemy? Or are you going to be one of those people who's going to be stubborn until the Lord's destruction is poured out upon the world? I was taking a look at some of these old firearms and some of the story. This is about the Mormon Underground period in the 1880s. Wilford Woodruff came. They were arresting all the church leaders for polygamy and attempting to really shut down the entire church. They wanted to arrest all the leaders, seize all the assets, close down things like that tabernacle. These firearms were used by different Mormons at the time to protect themselves from federal marshals. Because the feds had come in. There was something called the Utah Commission, and their job was to come into Utah, arrest all the Mormon leadership, and imprison them all, if possible, and then seize all the church's assets. They wanted to seize everything from these United Order farms that were growing our food.
Why were they doing that?
Well, for one thing, there's a lot of money in it. If you have the chance to plunder an entire state, you're talking about a lot of plunder here. But on top of that, ostensibly it was to enforce the anti-polygamy laws. So they said there's only one way to get rid of polygamy, and that is to get rid of all the polygamists. Well, it turns out that was basically all the Mormons.
So you're not going to see this at an LDS museum?
No, you're not going to see this at most LDS museums because they don't want to talk about polygamy. They don't want to talk about fighting the feds. They don't want to talk about any of that because it's kind of an embarrassment. For more than a century, Mormons have been doing everything that they can to appear accepted by mainstream society, right? And it doesn't look as good if you're fighting against the United States and America. At the time, though, there was this understanding that you couldn't be a Mormon and be an American. It was like a rival United States. If you could think of Salt Lake City as like a rival Washington, D.C., with a totally different set of values and ideas and religion, they wanted to be their own nation out here.
Currency.
Yep, they had their own currency, had their own language, they had their own...
own language?
Well, the Deseret Alphabet. We should ask them if they have any of the old books here.
Had you heard of the Deseret Alphabet?
I have not. No.
I have not either. I'm loving this history lesson.
This is
honestly
a lot of. I mean, I've heard of bits and pieces of a lot of this, but this is interesting to kind of bring it all together. This has been very good.
Yeah, and he's very well spoken and sounds like he's very well versed. And again, when he says this is not going to be in an LDS museum, right? There's so much church history that you are not taught when you grow up LDS, mainstream Mormon. If you have the missionaries coming, I guarantee you, if you ask any young Mormon missionary boy and you ask them questions about these things specifically, I bet you 99.99% of them would have no clue what you were even talking about.
No, I remember when I was on my mission, I had not long before that left the FLDS church with all of my background in polygamy and that. And I remember I had other companions and elders around me that were just completely surprised by all of this information that they hadn't heard, that I was taught on a daily basis about Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, John Taylor, and their early prophets. So yes, you're right. A lot of them did not hear about a lot of things in the early days of the church.
Yeah. In a little bit of everyone's defense, I do have to say that I think most churches, they're going to give the information of what their current beliefs are, And if you go to a Baptist church, you might not know the history of the Baptist church or everything about their history for a certain congregation or something, just because you choose to believe those. So not saying that the LDS church needs to give a full history lesson to every person that they ever teach, but I think it's fun and interesting to hear more about these things because it isn't something I know about.
And also, in their defense, there are a lot of active LDS members that do know all of this information, right?
True,
it's not like they're completely hiding it from the rest of the church necessarily. You just have to dig to find it.
Okay, so there's some articles about its history. It was totally unique and actually, here we go. Okay. So basically it was a phonetic alphabet. It was still English, but it was written in a totally different and phonetic way. All these different Mormon pioneers, they came from all over Europe, all over the South Pacific as well. There's a strong Tongan, Samoan, and Hawaiian presence in early Mormonism, and they wanted to learn how to read and write English, and so they used the Deseret Alphabet as a way to spell phonetically. And so this reads the Deseret Alphabet.
Wow.
We were talking about the number of converts. Are
That's
we
just
growing,
cool.
or are we staying stable, or are we going, declining in membership? And we aren't declining. We actually have had some, but we're not converting thousands of members like the mainstream Brighamite LDS Church in Salt Lake City.
They call them the Brighamites.
Brighamite.
I mean, it's true. That is considered one of the sects that broke off after Joseph Smith was murdered. There were multiple strands and groups of people. I think because the Brighamite, per se, church became the largest, it was easy for them to claim, no, we are the mainstream Mormon church. And because there was the majority of people followed Brigham Young and that continued to grow, it was just easy to we got to claim.
Right.
We got to claim the name.
Yeah, you have to wonder.
But it's funny.
It's so interesting, though. Some people believe it's the true one because it grew a lot, and others believe that it's not the true one because it grew a lot.
That's true.
Right? Like in the FLDS, the way I was raised, we didn't believe that that the church was meant to grow in the same way that the mainstream LDS church has grown, because we were taught that it was a special
small community, like the amount of people that were chosen to be a part of God's community and a part of Zion on earth, as you could say, was just, there weren't that many people out there that were special enough, right? And so that was a way for them to make us feel even more special. Yeah.
Fishers of men were more like hunters. And, it takes a certain type of person to live this lifestyle. He's the temple president.
Oh.
And I'm the temple matron for our temple where we live in Nevada.
So why Nevada?
Because we were called to move there. We were asked to move there and start up a community.
So the prophet of the church got a revelation. He told you, go to Nevada.
Yeah.
Where in Nevada?
The laws in Nevada are as such that we can't be as persecuted, I guess, so to speak, if you could, in some other states, because they allow, things like prostitution.
Yeah, it'd be 3 feet.
And so, it's okay, and you'd be able to have, multiple relationships. I mean, men there all the time.
Okay.
Do those kinds of things, and
so temple
the laws
presidents
there make it so that our lifestyle is a little bit more palatable and livable.
Okay, because in Utah it flips back and forth, right?
Yep.
It was a felony at one time.
Yep, and now it's a misdemeanor.
But they're not really arresting anyone for it,
Not
right?
really, unless there's other abuses going on.
And unfortunately for you, it all gets batched into one, right? Everyone thinks just like the abuses and...
Right, everybody thinks that one abuser speaks for everybody and is the example for everybody, but it's not. And there's various different fundamentalist communities, and we're not all the same. We don't all follow the same people. We're not all FLDS, and that's not our group at all. And we don't follow Warren Jeffs. He's in jail for some pretty bad things, and we don't agree with what he did.
So a lot of LDS members don't even know this, right?
Correct.
Okay, they just think FLDS.
Yeah, they think all fundamentalists are FLDS, and they're not. This is more than just a religion for us. We lean on each other, We're not related blood-wise for generations, maybe DNA test shows or something shows that
cousins
we're
or
ninth
something.
cousins, but we would have never known each other otherwise if we hadn't have been in this situation and in this religion and became true family.
Okay.
I know that in my community where I live, my husband might be at work and I might need something. Maybe the swamp cleaner had a problem and it's now flooding my roof or something. I know I can just get on our text group or I can make a phone call and somebody will be there to help me soon.
So you're spread out in Nevada, St. George, near Salt Lake. Any other locations I'm missing?
Oh yeah, look. There's...
You know, the main thing is that we do believe in gathering, right? We want to be gathered together into one community. We haven't necessarily all succeeded at doing that yet, but our gathering place in Nevada really has that special value because when you come there, that's where we built the temple. That's where we grow our own food. That's where we can build each other's houses.
You grow
and
your
things
own
like that.
food in Nevada.
Yeah, which is, is not exactly the best place to go to grow your own food.
But we grow a lot of food there.
Is it the new Zion?
Well, Zion first has to be built within, right? First
Good
you have
answer.
to become a Zion people, then you can build the city. So it's not exactly the glistening new Jerusalem yet, right? But it makes us into a Zion people.
It's the Zion prep.
Zion prep.
Yeah.
So Salt Lake doesn't mean as much to you guys as out there in Nevada?
Well, basically, that's just an older, more failed experiment, really. Like, they tried to make a Zion there, and that was beautiful back in the pioneer days.
Wow.
They did build a lot of beautiful things. But what's come out of that now is they've become worldly. It's just like any other city in America.
Okay, you mean they failed? What do you mean?
Oh,
Wow.
man.
Okay, so
I
him-
feel personally attacked. I'm just kidding. I totally understand his perspective on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Him saying that they became worldly, that is also what I was taught, is that the mainstream LDS church became this worldly place. And because of that, they became a lot bigger too. And they became a part of the world, as they would say. And so we actually looked in the Book of Mormon, it talks about the great and abominable church that is like this awful church that's run by Satan, basically. And we looked at, and I don't know that this was FLDS teachings necessarily, but for whatever reason, in my mind, growing up out there, the mainstream LDS church was that great and abominable church talked about in the Book of Mormon.
It was never doctrine, but it was understood in the same way that we believed it was the Catholic Church.
Oh, really?
Yep. We were kind of taught, like, it's not like, oh, the doctrine is that means, like, it was, like you said, like an understood cultural thing, like, that's the Catholic
because
Church.
the church was bigger.
Because the
therefore-
Catholic was bigger and shinier and had more money than we did. And you guys looked at us as big and shiny and had more money than you did, I think.
So things are changing, though. Isn't the LDS church becoming up
Very-
there in wealth as well now?
Yes. But I was going to say, I can't blame people for thinking something like that, like becoming worldly, because you have beautiful Temple Square that has all this historical, doctrinal significance. But then the church also built like a super expensive fancy mall across
Right.
the street, right? And has all these investments and things. So while hearing that a little bit, I'm like, oh, I feel a little bit attacked. Like my roots feel attacked. At the same time, I can understand why from
they would think
outsiders
that.
it looks that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So very interesting. Their main hub is in Nevada. No wonder we haven't seen their temple around St. George.
We have research to do. I am excited to learn more about this.
Yeah, and we live in Nevada, so I wonder how close they are.
I know.
You mean they failed?
They failed to become a Zion people. They became eventually became about money. I mean, especially if you
Well,
look
you can't say for everyone, right? I mean,
Well, no, I'm not trying to speak for.
There's a lot of good people in the Mormon Church,
Yeah, there's
and
a
we
lot of good
still love the Mormon. We call it the Mother Church, but yeah, there are just a tremendous amount of good people, and we love them.
Thank you.
And some of them will come to us, and many won't. Most won't.
We all have a role to play.
Wow.
St. George
As
Temple.
far as I'm concerned, this is not only my heritage, this is part of our faith. It wasn't until long after this temple was completed before they broke off from us. And
So I was asking off camera.
They broke off from us. So they do consider mainstream. So they're a break off of the mainstream.
Yep.
This temple is so beautiful. They did a bunch of renovations on it
recently, yeah.
And so there's been a lot of open houses. That's why it looks so busy. But this is the temple that Sam and I got married in.
It is. And right before they switched back to the temple, they were showing another building right before this, and that is a chapel or a church meeting house. So a lot of people wonder, are those temples, or what's the meeting house? What's the temple? What's the chapel? Right? So that was a quick representation right after another. This is a chapel. This is where they meet for Sunday services and things, and then over to the temple here. And this is where you actually have to have that, what they call the temple recommend. You have to be found worthy before a church leader before you can enter into the temple here.
Yep.
Do you have LDS friends?
Oh, lots, yeah.
So you get in debates a lot with
oh,
this
yeah.
session, right?
I was a temple worker, an ordinance worker in the mainstream LDS church, and I remain a temple worker in Christ Church now. So I do think my opinions are informed opinions, right? But obviously they're going to disagree. A lot of them think that it's good to change these ordinances because they're faster, they're easier, they can watch a video. They still feel like they're being close to God, even if they're making different promises to Him, right? But I would say if you don't make the same covenants, you can't expect the same results. You can't expect the same blessings. I think of it like a recipe. If somebody says, oh yeah, we want to make cookies, and then they start changing all the ingredients, who knows what's going to come out of that oven? Right? And it's the same thing, I think, when it comes to religion. You put in this, certain elements, you're going to get a certain result.
So where do you see the LDS church in 20 years?
Oh, probably even further afield. One of the big changes that I've been anticipating for some time is I think they're going to have gay temple marriages for homosexual marriage.
Okay, you're against that.
Well, honestly, since I don't think that their ceremonies are valid, I think they should be as inclusive as possible anyway. But yeah.
Sorry.
He is very blunt.
He's very blunt, but when he says, like, I feel like I have a very informed opinion, so far nothing he's saying is like inaccurate
to what we've heard and been taught, right?
Yeah, to what we've been heard. So he hasn't been saying anything where I can be like, no, he's wrong. We didn't change that, or this hasn't changed. But the bluntness to the way he's saying it so matter-of-factly and so bluntly is very entertaining. I want to sit down and chat with him. When he's like, I want to debate, I'm like, I don't need a debate. I just want to hear more, from him. Like, I know Peter has, hours and hours and hours with people. We experience that and has to get it down to about an hour for a video. But I'm like, man, I want to hang out with this guy for an afternoon. We need to reach out to him.
Yes, I'm sure he could talk for days on end, too, with all of his different opinions and whatnot, as it seems. But, wow, yeah, he's very open and blunt about what he thinks and feels, even though he knows that it's probably against what the majority of everyone else thinks and feels.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a certain amount of heteronormativity that is really kind of baked into the Mormon worldview. We believe in this idea that our attributes, even our bodies, right, are divine in origin. That means that, our gender is part of our identity. That men and women are different. That doesn't, not to say they're unequal, but they are complementary.
What if a gay couple tried to come into your church?
We actually have some gay members, and we did have a gay couple that moved into our gathering place.
Okay.
And they were welcome to participate on a social level.
Okay.
And we try to be good neighbors. People need some love and acceptance, but that doesn't mean that we can change what our view is of the entire plan of God or the entire creation of the world. I mean, I almost like to think of this in terms of like Asian philosophy, which bears certain odd similarities to Mormonism. Male and female, the yin and the yang, these are fundamental concepts. It's not about any individual's personal sexual expression. It's about the fact that we view these things as the fundamental reality that underlies, existence itself. And the fact that those things are gendered, it leads to a worldview that has a certain amount of that in it. This is one of the reasons why there's so much focus on families.
Yeah.
Right? It's about, what is that about? It's about procreation, but it's also about all of our relationships in that creative, thriving community. That's the goal. We often cover our heads when we pray. Women often will wear like a light veil. Men will often wear like a kippah or a kufi. It's symbolic of eternity. It's circular, it's white, and it represents our submission to God and that God is our head. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this.
That does not have any Mormon fundamental roots that I'm aware of.
No, nor does the way that he's praying with holding his hands out like that. So interesting. I wonder where they got those ideas, because unless it was in the fundamentals of the church that were long gone before we were ever taught anything, because I've never seen wearing a hat. I've never everything that I've seen has always been folding arms, bowing your head when praying. So
unless they're trying to add like things from the temple into your everyday life.
Maybe.
The covering of your head and veils.
Oh, and just doing it in a different way.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'd love to hear more about that.
Wonderful lunch, and that we're able to be here with Peter to eat it. Please bless him for providing this wonderful food for us, and please bless all of us that we'll be able to have thy spirit. Have a wonderful day today. That we'll be able to enjoy all of these sites of our history with the pioneers. That we'll be able to learn something to bring home with us, so that we can be motivated to greater righteousness. I say this in Jesus Christ.
Wow.
It's a vitality mat. What it does is in just a few seconds, it changes the food. It reads the nearest person to it, and it changes it into a vibration that's healthy for you.
A mat underneath that is not any fundamental Mormon beliefs. They definitely have some extra things. Have you ever heard of that? A vitality mat?
No, I mean, I don't claim to know everything, but what I'm seeing right now, I feel like I have a fair amount of information and knowledge about the mainstream fundamentalists and everything. But this one moment here seems like he's talking about how churches need to stay the same, or is it even the truth anymore? And then they come to this meal and they're like, woo, where are you headed there, brother? I have never seen or heard of a lot of the things that's going on right now.
Yeah. In case you can't tell by the shocked look on our faces. Maybe I need to make our faces bigger through this part.
Thank you. Would you like one of my shrimps?
Oh, thank you. I don't eat shrimp.
Okay.
It's my choice. I'm just fastidious about what goes in here.
Okay.
And shrimp are known to have a lot of heavy metals and toxins. Now, I really don't want your appetite, have you?
Just eat some heavy metal.
I'm going to take some heavy metal. So, you guys all are pretty healthy, right? Is that something in the church?
But a part of it.
Yeah.
We all try to strive to be healthy.
Not all of them,
but we strive.
Not all of them. Some people don't care what they put in there.
That's true.
And their thing.
She talks like my grandma.
It's interesting that you have connected with us, because as my observation and experience of the last 80 years, this group of people are the most unique of all the Mormon groups of any kind, including the Church in Salt Lake. I grew up in the Church in Salt Lake. I know it from top to bottom. I've lived with general authorities, personal friends with some of them, been in and out all the way along. This little group of people did not come out of fundamentalists.
Okay.
But it came out of a core group of leaders that had the original teachings and connections that Joseph Smith had. And this was deliberately and directly organized about 40 years ago on that basis and on the foundation, the very foundation principles.
And this is just...
So that's so crazy. So this answered a lot of the questions that we've had, right? So 40 years ago. So we're talking, what, 80s-ish? But this is very long time after polygamy ended within the mainstream Mormon church.
So they continued to believe in a lot of these mainstream LDS prophets that said polygamy is no longer to be practiced at all. And then way down the road decided, never mind, polygamy is right, and so we're going to break off and do our own thing. So to me, that seems, I mean, I don't want to come across as negative towards them, but it seems less realistic to wanting to stick to the truths of polygamy than some of these other breakoffs that broke off the moment that the church put an end to it.
Yeah, because they said that the church broke off from them. They've said that like 2 different times. Like the mainstream Mormon church broke off from them. But if there were all these years spanning of no polygamy and then they went and started practicing polygamy, it would seem that they broke off of the mainstream.
Right.
But I'd be curious to ask them who they thought was the last true prophet within the Mormon prophet or the mainstream LDS prophet lineage.
Right.
Who would they consider the last true prophet before their first prophet? If that matches up lineage-wise, because the FLDS, they didn't start that church until 1927 or 29, right in there. But, their people were already kind of starting to break off after the first manifesto and then after the second manifesto. So there was like this shift in beliefs, and then the church wasn't formed until 1927, 29 in there. So you got to wonder, in the 80s, are they having that same, like they believed all the prophets up to that, or do they really think a couple prophets back wasn't cutting it and it just took them a while to organize themselves?
I don't know, but it sure took them a long time to organize themselves if that's the way they went. But
maybe he'll tell us more.
Maybe they'll explain that, I hope.
There's no laws that said that, but to me, in my heart, the core requirement is you've got to have a testimony that Joseph Smith was and is a prophet of God and still leads this church. And the Book of Mormon is the Word of God.
So Nelson means nothing to all of you. Is that correct? The current president?
He's just a good man, but he's not our prophet.
Right. We usually don't want to criticize.
Okay, that's great. So LDS members look at Nelson as their North Star, let's say.
Right.
And you're looking at Joseph Smith.
Well, yes, ultimately, and so are they.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's.
But, I mean, so we all go back to Joseph Smith, right? But our prophet is not Nelson. We have a different prophet.
So most everyone here came from LDS?
Yeah. Well, they were born in it.
They were born in it.
I'm a 7th generation LDS.
I have no idea.
Left the LDS church and came here.
What made you leave the LDS church to come here?
Damn. No. I mean, we had a missionary come to our house and talk to us and share the gospel with us, but before that we were searching because we had a feeling like something was missing in the LDS church. It wasn't the same as when I was growing up, as it was in the 90s and the early 2000s. It wasn't the same as in the 70s. And so, we were searching. Where did that priesthood go, that the power that the saints would say, I was cured of this and I was healed of that. I have a great-grandfather who was healed by the missionaries in New York in the early 1800s, and he could walk. He was going to lose his leg, and they healed him and he could walk after baptism. They promised him if he wanted to get baptized, he could walk down to the water and get baptized, and he wouldn't ever need this cane again, and his leg would heal. And he did, and he converted. And you don't see those things today in the LDS church. And so we started searching because we felt like there was something missing.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
The miracles and things were very much talked about in the olden days, in the beginnings of the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
I notice it's interesting that they don't ever mention the name of their current prophet.
I was thinking
like
that
he's
same
some kind of secret.
thing. Yeah.
You know what else I wonder? Now that she's been talking a little bit, it sounds like a lot of these people converted, later on, like pretty recent. Not, I mean, in the long scheme of things, but I wonder if their leader or the first leader of the church they now belong to did split off from the mainstream LDS church way back when. And maybe the church that they have now just took a very, very long time to get any members.
Well, he said that there was like high leaders in the church, in the mainstream church, right? That kind of got together and then broke off. So, or they think the church broke off, the LDS church broke off.
Right.
But yeah, and this is kind of what I was saying earlier, the idea that some people within the church, when they look back and they do see the changes and there's progressive changes, they go, this can't be the truth if it's changing, because we're taught it's restorationalist. And so therefore they start searching for something else, and then they find fundamentalism. So I feel like her kind of story in saying that the LDS church isn't how it used to be, it's absolutely not how it used to be. And that does cause problems for some people.
Right. And going back, I didn't want to completely avoid the miracles thing. I know people probably want to hear our opinion on that. So I will say there are still a lot of active members, and you could probably speak for this, of the mainstream LDS church that do believe that miracles still happen today through that priesthood. I'll speak for myself from the FLDS church. Growing up in the FLDS church, I saw and experienced what I would consider miracles as well. And it's not really clear exactly how there can be so many religions that claim to have the truth, and yet there are people experiencing miracles in all of these different groups. Of course, probably the most popular theory is that there is a God that is there for everyone, regardless of their religious background. And if someone has enough faith in him, then miracles can happen. That's probably the most common one we've heard, right?
Yeah, but within Mormonism, they believe that they have priesthood authority of God. God's power on earth is what they call priesthood. And so when they say they told her grandfather that he would be able to walk and it happened, they don't believe that other churches have the authority to make things like that happen.
Exactly, and that's what in their mind makes them special, right? So that was what I was going to get at. So thank you. Is that a lot of people will say, well, miracles can happen to anyone as long as they believe in God. But then you have people like the way I was raised also in the FLDS that say, no, we're the ones with the priesthood power. The miracles that happen here are coming from God. The magical things that happen elsewhere in the world is Satan's work. So, that's another way to look at it, but I don't know. It's very interesting, but I can say for myself that I was raised in the FLDS church that most everyone listening today would look at as this place that is crazy, oppressive, very cult-like place that no one would want to be a part of because of everything that's all over the news. And I experienced what I would say were very faith-promoting miracles growing up in my childhood. So it's interesting to see everyone seeing those things in their own way.
Growing up LDS, I don't think I ever saw what I would consider a miracle or had anybody personally say that they had a miracle happen. I feel like growing up mainstream LDS, there were some stories that would float around about things that would happen, and then there were times like in seminary where they would be like, church leaders have said that, to stop sharing stories that aren't factual, that didn't actually happen. And they kind of put an end to some stories that have been floating around that may or may not have been true. It was more of the idea that like anything could be a miracle. It was more of, somebody answering the door to a missionary, that could have been a miracle. But the idea of like, you're now healed and now you can walk, those miracles, I feel like even by the time I was being raised in the 90s and early 2000s, had kind of gone away from the LDS church. So I'm not surprised that she said she felt like it had gone away.
Right. If you're expecting to see the miracles that people talked about in the early days of the church and they're not there anymore, I can see that being concerning and wondering, well, where's the miracles? Where are those happening, right? And so some people may go searching for those. Yeah.
Do you feel like nobody drinks here, obviously, but the LDS church is Coors Light and you're Coors? Is that a way of saying it?
Yeah, that's a way of saying it.
I don't understand.
We're
that
not
at all,
decaf.
You're not decaf, yeah.
All right, Benjamin, that's how the cookie crumbles. I just said goodbye to everyone and got hugs from everyone and didn't have the power button on. So, well, everyone gave me hugs and smiles, and thank you for bringing me out.
You bet.
Because you don't have to, it's not an easy group to get into, no offense.
True.
Fundamentalist Mormons, because the camera comes out and people are worried.
People get shy. I mean, it wasn't very many years ago that people were killed for having this religion. It wasn't very many years ago that people were imprisoned just for believing in this religion. And so, yeah, a lot of people are nervous. But in fact, one of the people today was just saying, oh, my father would freak out if they were doing this. But, we live in a world now where people can live as they believe. They they can be more vocal about it, and they're less likely to have any problems, you know?
Anything else you'd like to say to the viewers, people out there watching?
Yeah, sure. I guess what I'd really like to say is, you know, we might be different, come from different walks of life, believe different things, but we're all people. And that's really what I want to do, is I want to build a bridge so that people won't be afraid of us, and that we'll be able to have these conversations, because we live in the same world, we live in the same communities. Hey, in Mormonism, we're all Mormons, right. But there are these divisions that have really come between people, and you know, I'd like to see us break down those barriers.
All right, so Benjamin, good stuff.
Yep,
thank you,
man.
brother.
Have a good one.
You too, man.
Well, another awesome video of Peter's.
Yes.
These are so fun. This one was so interesting. I felt like I learned so much stuff about LDS history, and I felt like I'm pretty well versed in LDS history at this point. But
right. I have some definite questions though about some of the things that they were doing, and I just wonder if that was ever a part of the Mormon doctrine at all, or
and that we just don't know. What if we don't know?
Maybe we don't know, or maybe they're adding certain things to it, which is very interesting. But we'll have to do some research. I'm very curious about this church now. Honestly, I had never heard about them.
Yeah,
I know there's a lot of break-off fundamental Mormon churches, though, so I'm sure there's lots more we haven't heard about.
Yeah, we are definitely going to be reviewing, I believe Peter has one more series coming, or one more episode of his Mormonism series coming out next week. We'll be reviewing that. Again, if you want to see our video with Peter, you can click the link below, as well as the other videos that we've reviewed so far. The largest Mormon community, one with Brock, who's awesome, and the Mormon family, dinner with the Mormon family. So lots of fun stuff there. And if you want to hear more of what it was like for Sam to grow up in polygamy, or watch more videos like this of us reacting to Mormonism, fundamental Mormonism, polygamous communities, then please like and subscribe.
Yes, thank you all so much for being here with us again today. We look forward to talking with you soon.
We'll talk to y'all soon.